and welcome to the Rangers Journal once again. I am your host, Ross Graham, and today we have got an action-packed podcast for you. Not only have we got Scotty and Billy talking us through the weekend's action and looking ahead at Benfica, we have got a super special VIP guest. Yes, we are certainly rolling out the red carpet tonight. This man is a legend of English refereeing history. His swan song was a Manchester United versus Millwall FA Cup final. It's the legend himself, Mr. Jeff Winter, will be joining us tonight. So looking forward to that one. Please do like and subscribe if you like this and the other Rangers Journal content. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this very special edition of the Rangers Journal. I am your host, Ross Graham. Before we come to the main event, as you can see him in the corner, I'm going to say hello to our Rangers Journal regulars. Scotty, how are you keeping, pal?
Hi, not bad at all, mate. Not bad at all. I was up at a game yesterday in a gantry for a gallant few, so that was a good experience. Happy I could come back down the road with the win into the semi-final.
Good man. Glad you could get that in nice and early and show off nice and early. Good for you, Scotty. I'd do the same. Billy, how are you keeping, pal?
I'm okay, mate. Still keeping the faith at the moment. Still happy.
Good man. Good man. And Jeff, welcome to the Rangers Journal. Firstly, thank you so much for taking the time out to jump on here today. How are you keeping, mate?
I'm fine. Enjoying my football. Well, especially this weekend. I had a good weekend. Usually if Rangers win, the Borough get beat. But this weekend, I went to watch my non-league side on Saturday. They won. Borough won. And obviously Rangers won yesterday. So long may it continue.
Yeah, a good weekend was had. So look, viewers at home, people that are listening, please do put your questions for Jeff in the comments. We'll try and get to as many as we can later on in the pod. But please do try and keep them to the point and reasonably sensible so we're not having to ditch on them. Jeff, look, I wanted to firstly ask you a bit about how you got involved with Rangers before we get into some of the recent football that's been played. How did your love affair with Rangers begin?
Well, it started many, many years ago. I mean, it was predominantly Jim Baxter. You know, he was and still is, always has been one of my favourite footballers. And at the time, he was playing for Rangers. He didn't do his popularity with me too much good when he signed for Sunderland, our local rivals in the Northeast. But I always loved Jim Baxter as a player. Saw the history and got to know about Glasgow Rangers, which is akin with my thoughts and beliefs. And then I first probably started coming up in the mid-90s, some of the European nights, you know, Mark Hateley, great games, great atmosphere. And then after my career was over, I mean, I came a few occasions over the years, but then it was only when my career was over in 2004 that I started coming regularly. And, you know, I'm a season ticket holder now, and probably a lot of the fans will see me at games home away, and especially in Europe. So it's a love affair that I don't really have to explain to you three or to your many listeners. I think once you get the bug, it's there for life, and you're not going to good days, bad days. And, you know, we've been through plenty in the last 10 years, but it's just something special. And apart from the 400-mile round trips, I thoroughly enjoy it.
Well, that's a very good answer. And that kind of leads me on nicely to my next question, which I hope you'll indulge me on. 7 years as a top flight English referee, facing off against Roy Keane, Gary Neville, some of the hardest men in football. Must have been a tough task. What's harder, being a top flight Premier League ref or supporting Rangers?
Well, being a ref, I mean, I was a referee for 25 years, and the last 9 years were in the Premier League. But when you finish being a referee, you don't finish being a referee, because once you've been a referee, you're referee for life. And, you know, whichever ground I'm in, whatever happens on the pitch, if the fans aren't happy, they turn and look at me. And I've got to be honest with you, sorry if the expletive isn't normally allowed on this show, but it's not my fucking fault. I was a referee. I'm not still a referee. But you know, a referee is for life, not just for Christmas. But watching, I love watching. I mean, yesterday we came up, and the atmosphere, the camaraderie amongst the fans, and everything went well for us on the pitch, which is... But I have what is known in our car, because there's tons of referees, tons of supporters come from England, as you're well aware. I've got what's called the Motherwell rule, and it means that when we're leaving Glasgow after a home game, the occupants of the car have got till Motherwell to get all the crap out of the system about the referee, the players, and anything and everything. And then after 14 miles, for the next 180 miles, we can talk about sex, drugs, rock and roll, anything but football. Because what does my head in is, you know, I love coming to Glasgow. I love coming anywhere in Scotland or to watch Rangers. But I couldn't live there because it seems as if it's a cauldron of 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, the politics, the conspiracy theories and everything else. I come to watch the football. Once I'm out of the ground, win, lose or draw, it's over. I don't want to be involved in everything that's going on. And it does make properly watching Rangers and following Rangers probably more enjoyable from my point of view. So always remember that, the Motherwell rule. Once you've got past there, get on with life. The game, you're not going to change anything, are you? You know, we've won, we've lost, we've drawn. The game is over. We can't then expect the referee to change his decision, you know, at 6:15 on a Saturday night. So I stick with that one, and it's working for me.
Well, that's another good answer. I think it's fair to say every Rangers fan doesn't think there's a conspiracy. Isn't that right, Rangers fans? Moving swiftly on to the game last night. So, Scotty, you saw the team sheet come up. Take me back to when you first saw that pop up and you saw the exact same team sheet as against the difficult, long endurance game against Benfica that we had. What was going through your head when you saw it pop up?
Can I be honest and say that I was worried about the fitness of the players? I thought on Thursday night, John Lundstram looked very tired towards the end of the game. Suter's not used to churning out Thursday, Sunday, Wednesday, Sunday, but 3 games in a week. John Suter's not used to that, but he's having to get used to it now. I was surprised that he at least wasn't rotated. Ridvan's another one that's not got... Come on, touched on it perfectly after a game last night when he says he can rely on more robust players, more players like Tavernier, Goldson, Lundstram, who can churn them sort of consistent performances out, and he's trying to get the other guys to their level, I think it's fair to say. So last night when I seen a team sheet, I was a wee bit like, all right, fair enough, we're going strong in the Scottish Cup, but is it needed? Was a question I think I was asking Ross. Don't get me wrong, the teams went and got the job done, but it's happened at a price. John Sterling he walked off the pitch with ice in his hamstring on Thursday. He's walked off holding his hamstring yesterday. Ross McCausland, another one. That's in the wide areas again. It's a wee bit worrying. That was my take. That was my initial thought.
Yeah, and I think that's fair enough. Billy, I'll come to you next. Before we touch on the goals and some of the incidents in the game, do you think Clement can see the end goal and the potential of this team of winning 3, potentially 4 trophies this season? And that kind of pot of gold at the end of the rainbow is worth putting his players through every 3 days? Or do you think it's more of a necessity that he's having to play them because we just don't have that depth?
No, I think we can see he's a bit of a gambler, because that was a gamble playing the same team that a few of them looked dead on their feet on Thursday night, at least like they'd ran a marathon. I've heard people say. So I think that you need to believe him when he says he's going to play his strongest team, and whether for whatever competition he wants to win everything, which is good. But again, Scotty brings out a good point. Like, was it really necessary to play that same team? Because I think he probably would have played that team on Thursday if he'd had the option again. So I think he's gambled on it. Whether these players are back, whether Sterling's back in time, is to be seen. Whether McCausland can play some part. But you're then relying on only rule 1, and I'm saying fit with a caveat to that Matondo's only just coming back from injury. Is he really fit enough to play 90 minutes on Thursday night? It's a gamble.
Is he fit enough? Is he good enough? Who knows?
Well, let's just concentrate on fitness first of all.
Fair enough. For those that are just joining, welcome. This is the Rangers Journal. We've got Jeff Winter on tonight, and he's going to answer a few questions later on. So please do put those in the chat, and we'll get round to them later on. Jeff, you mentioned that you'd made the journey up to Edinburgh for the game. Poor you. What was the mood like in the stadium, and what were your thoughts when you saw the same team sheet up as Thursday?
Well, I take the point that the other lads have made. But, if you think back to the Walter Smith days, I remember us having, important games, and then we'd go to Queen of the South in the League Cup on a Tuesday, Wednesday night, and it was the same starting 11. And even back then, you were always thinking, couldn't we freshen it up a bit? Couldn't we give some players the rest? When you talk to footballers actually love the continuity. If you've scored a goal on a Thursday night, you want to score a goal on a Sunday. So I was a little bit shocked. I thought it would have been an opportunity. We do have strength. We at the moment, we've got injuries in certain key areas, but we've got strength in other positions that you would think it wouldn't have greatly weakened the team. Because, if Suter gets injured yesterday, then he's got to rely on a Balogun or Davies or someone coming in. And, they've proved that they can do it on the big occasion. But, the atmosphere building on from Thursday, it was on a high yesterday. The Rangers fans, you can never fault them for getting behind the team. And it was great. And obviously the fact that we were in the ascendancy after, a little bit of an iffy start with thing that drives me crazy. We don't see it as much at Rangers as we do in England. This fannying about at the back, nearly cost us the goal. We were very, very lucky not to concede. But once we got our noses in front, I didn't really see or think that we were going to be under any danger. And then just to help us a little bit, they give us a 2-man advantage. So all's well that ends well.
Well, before we get on to the major talking points and incidents in the game, we'll just run through the goals as a refresher. The first goal, James Tavernier lays it down the line to Sterling, who's making a cutting run to the box, and he gets brought down by Obita in the box. The referee gives a penalty. The penalty is initially saved by Marshall, and John Lundstrom, no surprise to anyone, is the hungriest man for the ball on the pitch. He makes the first stride into the box, times his run beautifully and nudges it into the goal, 1-0 Rangers. Go into the second half, and there's a couple of controversial incidents that we'll talk about, but talk about the second goal. Fabio Silva picks the ball out on the left, cuts inside and slides lovely. Goal into the keeper's near post. I think his composure was really good there. Billy, do you think that we should have punished Hibs more when the players were sent off? Do you think we could have maybe got 3 or 4 and really sent a statement out?
I felt Hibs, they were so, I don't know what the right word is, if frenetic is the right word, they were too emotionally involved. So we really just calmly sat back and let them run themselves ragged and tire themselves out. It's hopefully it's not a mental frame of mind we bring into Thursday night because it's such a big game. This was a big game for them. They had the week to prepare. They probably let it get in their heads too much because they were like headless chickens by the second half. So no, I think when a team's playing like that, you just sit back and pass it round. Yep, and we finished them off in the end. I never thought we looked. I mean, the most danger we were in was Jack Butland doing it to himself. That's how close they got to scoring. Jack Butland's having to set up chances for them. So yeah, they never laid a glove on us really. Apart from the tackles, I suppose. But no, I never thought we were in any danger. I don't feel. I think I said me and Kai again said on Friday night's pod that we felt 2-0 would be the score, and thankfully we were right. It was fairly comfortable, I think.
Yeah. Scotty, personally, I was actually quite impressed with some of the Hibs players. I think they showed good quality on the ball. There was a central midfielder that came off in the second half due to the sending off. I thought he had a really good game. A couple of their forward line looked very bright. Were you impressed with the players that they brought in?
Aye, definitely. The boy, I still can't get his name right. Is it Marcondes? I think plays up front for them. I was really impressed with him. He gave Connor Goldson a torrid time in the first half, and especially the first kind of 15-20 minutes coming out into the second. He'd a really good game, but ultimately what's happened is they've lost their discipline, and it's cost them it's cost them a tie. And I suppose, in a sense, that is why they're playing where they're playing just now, is to get to a certain level. Don't get me wrong, I think that Hibs can feel aggrieved that some of their teammates have let them down, because, I mean, we're going to get into sendings off, but they were sendings off, and the decisions were right, in my opinion. I mean, I don't really think anybody can dispute it, to be honest with you, Ross.
No, and look, you know, I think in hindsight, looking back, I think they probably were Reds. I think that there was a franticness to the game. I think we could all agree that there was a real tempo to that, and both teams were going. It was, you know, like an old school cup match. Could you feel that in the stadium, Jeff? Could you feel like there was tension in the air and that the tackles were flying in? Sometimes you get that impression in the stadium that this could kick off any moment here.
Well, no, the game had its moments, but certainly, you know, it wasn't like that from the start. They were certainly getting stuck in. They weren't too bothered whether it was man or ball. But there wasn't that much atmosphere in the stadium when you can only muster 11,000 home fans for a cup quarter final. That's something that does leave me scratching my head. But no, I thought Rangers managed the game well, and taking the point the lads made about team selection, we were in a position, especially when it went down to 10 men and 9 men, where we could save. And yes, we'd all love to have gone on and got 4, 5, 6 or whatever. But I think it was a case of keeping the ball, letting the ball do the work, saving the legs, and, you know, coming off with a little bit more in the tank, because obviously massive game coming up on Thursday. So it certainly helped our cause with their ill discipline. I mean, when you said there, nobody could doubt the red cards. There seems like there's a guy called Michael Stewart saved them totally different to the majority of us. But no, I mean, in the stadium, they look like red cards. I've just watched Sports Scene before I came to join yourself tonight. And, you know, obviously, when you're watching it on television, you do get the slow motion and different angles, and you see things differently than you would do sat way up in the gods behind the goal. But I thought Rangers were professional. They managed the game well. And yes, at 1-0, you're thinking, well, they've only got 9 men, go for the jugular. But it would have been silly as pushing that little bit harder and picking up another injury. So, and the gaffer got the opportunity, as he seems to do when a game is won. He does have, you know, if you say, well, the starting 11 is the only 11, you know, and he doesn't trust the other players, I don't think that's right, because he's I can't remember the last time we didn't use all our substitutes. So he's got confidence, and when you've got Dessers who will work very, very hard, we know he's got his shortcomings in some aspects, but he does put a shift in. And then, you know, you've got the confidence that you've got other players that can come on up front, and some very good additions to midfield. And it's quite frightening, as you know, very positive to think that if we ever do get back to having a full squad, fully fit, then the manager's going to have some big decisions to make.
Yeah. And I think you're seeing that as well in the midfield there with Lawrence and Campbell. I think Lawrence has been playing very well recently. Campbell clearly will be coming back soon, but, you know,
He's
Lawrence
got to fight on to get back into the starting 11, though. I know he's a fan's favourite, but, you know, when you look at the job, people that you would never imagine would get the headlines, people like Sterling, and obviously Diamande, since he's come in, he looks as if he's a footballer. So, and I've always been a fan of Tom Lawrence. If he can stay free, he'll get goals from midfield as well. So you start mentioning all these names, and then you think, hang on a minute, we're only allowed to play 11 players. So, you know, it is a 16-man squad game. And it's great to think that, you know, with the games that we're going to have coming up from now to the end of the season, if you've got people that you can bring on, like Cantwell or Lawrence, if he isn't starting in midfield, you've got cover at the back. And if we can get the wide players, you know, I don't know whether Seamer's going to be back anytime soon. It's a really good position to be in. And I think those that want to knock us off the perch will be a little bit fearful when you look at the sort of squad and not so much the squad, but the way the squad is now working. Because, predominantly, other than a couple of changes in January, it is the squad we've had all season. It's just now the performing.
Yeah, they're working as a unit, aren't they, for sure? And I think one thing Clement's brought in is that determination to give everyone minutes. Obviously the weekend there, he's rotated nobody from the previous game, but in the presser afterwards, he did mention, look, I knew I'd be getting the players on. I knew I'd be giving them a chance at some point, but I just wanted to start with that familiar team. Look, before we get on to the juicy, controversial moments, I just wanted to have one quick whip round the room about Fabio Silva. So there's been a few rumblings in the press this week that maybe Rangers are starting to put the feelers out as to whether or not this guy would ever be approachable from a price point of view come the summer. Scotty, do you think we're seeing the best out of him now coming off the left? Personally, I think I've seen a different player playing off the left. I think his invention is superb and clearly a highly skilled player and a bit quicker than I thought as well. What are your thoughts on Silva these past few weeks?
I think I'm going to say something a wee bit controversial here because I know there's Abdallah Sima fans about, but I think Fabio Silva is probably the best left winger at the club, because I think he's one of the best players at the club, to be brutally honest. Wolves don't pay 35 million for that kind of talent for absolutely no reason. I think we're seeing the best out of him now that he's playing in his favoured position. We're going to start getting numbers from him. Anytime he seems to play as a 9, he plays as a 10, if that makes any sense. Like he's almost like a false 9 playing in a 10 position. It just doesn't really work. He's not got that kind of natural instinct, whereas for his goal yesterday, kind of cuts inside and then just leathers it, just finishes it and puts the game to bed. And I was reading his quotes before the pod. I think this boy wants to move to Rangers. Reading his quotes when he's been asked about it, I think he wants this move. It'll be interesting to find out. Billy's obviously got a wee interview lined up at some point this week with a member for a Wolves podcast for everybody to talk about the Fabio Silva subject. Where do Wolves see it? Where do we think Rangers see it? And where can we potentially meet in the middle? But I think the player's going to have a big say in this, depending on the kind of end to the season he has. But see, if you look at the talent we've got potentially in this team, when everybody's fully fit and you've got like say your Abdallah Sima, Fabio Silva, Danilo, Dessers, Rabbi Matondo, Oscar Cortez, Todd Cantwell, Tom Lawrence. It's a ridiculous amount of talent and we can't have it all. Right? I'm sorry to say it, but we can't have it all at the end of the season. There needs to be decisions made in terms of who we're going to go with. I think if we're going to do the Silva deal, I think there needs to be like a kind of 50% sell-on clause added for Wolves to be even interested into working within our budget. But I would say it's a pipeline dream. I'm just so happy boys playing with a smile on his face. You don't see footballers playing like that anymore. You don't see them playing with a smile, and it's nice to see he's infectious. He's an infectious character, and he's a good footballer at the same time. His game against Benfica last week was really good as well. He came out with a point to prove, and he's followed that confidence on to yesterday.
Yeah, and I think you can see the passion in him playing for Rangers, that maybe these last few weeks and months have really brought a side out to him where he's kind of loyal, part of the team and contributing as well, which obviously makes him more relevant and want to stay and do more. I'm not sure if my hearing's gone a bit off this evening, but did you say that Dessers was in a pool of huge amounts of talent? Did I hear that correctly?
See, yesterday, see what I'm going to say about Cyril Dessers yesterday. See what I noticed. He set the tempo up front. See, in the first 10-15 minutes, the guy never stopped running. It was closing down space. I think there was a chance within, I would need to look back at my notes, I think there was a chance within like the first kind of 5 minutes where he just chases the ball down, wins it. I can't remember how it played. I think that was the one he actually chopped inside and shot at the keeper. Whereas if he passes it straight to Tom Lawrence, he's got an assist and it's a goal and Rangers are 1-0 up. What Dessers can do now is set a tempo for the team, but his decision-making in the final third is still causing problems. For me, he's too inconsistent. If he stopped trying to chop everything and actually just take a touch and shoot, we would have some striker in my hands. We really would. I think he's a good striker in terms of effort now. But in terms of ability, I'm still on the fence.
Okay, fair enough. Billy, let's talk Fabio Silva again. If the price was right and we could come to a level of agreement, would you want to see this guy stay on? Do you think he's got more levels in him to take us to the next stage, probably both in Europe and that kind of consistent domestic trophies?
I mean, I think if you're asking, does a £35 million player improve us? The answer is definitely yes. I'm going to do more research, obviously, with this interview coming up. But I don't see a world where we sign him permanently. That's just too much of a gulf for me. I've seen it suggested we take him for another year on loan. Scott, you took my point actually, because I crossed my mind like a really big sell-on fee might be the only way of getting him, with maybe a high single-figure digit transfer fee from us. Like, it's whether we've even got that. I guess it would depend on our budget for next season. I would like to see him play. I remember I said to you, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, Ross, that he's disappointed me the most so far because he came with a lot of expectation. But I now see he was not playing in the position he should have been playing in. He's been playing as a striker, and he isn't that type of player exactly. Although he can cover it sometimes half decently. But like him playing out in the left, I'd love to see him and Sima fight out for a place there. But I don't think we've got the resources to have both of them fighting for one position, if you know what I mean. But he improves us, and I'm liking what I've seen the last couple of weeks now. He's playing out in the left.
Yeah. Potentially, you look at some of the big earners that we've got on the books at the minute, your Roofs, potentially Jacks, other players like that, and see those offloaded and further investment into the club. I wouldn't rule it out at least another year on loan. Jeff, you were there yesterday. How good was Silva? Because to me, he looked like he was consistently hungry for the ball, always causing a havoc for those defenders, and just felt like he was really natural on that wing.
Well, it's all about, I think Rangers fans and football fans in general are far too quick to judge, and you come in. I remember, and the people who sit near me at Ibrox, they got sick of me fighting John Lundstrom's cause, because after 4 or 5 games when he got sent off, the screaming, he's not fit to wear the shirt, he's not good enough, get rid of him. And I said, by Christmas, he'll be our best player. And he wasn't far short of it. We're too quick to judge. Players come in, sometimes they're playing out of position. They've got to get used to the league, the surroundings. And, on his few appearances, quite bit part until the last couple of games, it was easy to sit and say, no, is he for us? But, he really got my attention last Thursday night against Benfica. Yes, he had a point to prove. He was in what appears to be his favoured position, and the confidence come through. And he's a player who we perhaps could have left out yesterday, but on the back of his performance last Thursday night, even though there's the risk of injury and everything, there's another chance for him to build on that confidence. And when you look at some of there was another game on that few people were interested in yesterday down in England. And when you look at the squads of teams that want to be competing at the top of any division, you need competition for players. As we've seen as we've seen this season with Rangers, the number of injuries we've had. So, can we have a squad that is big enough so that, if Sima's out, we've got someone else to come in there. And if you want to win things, and if you want to be going on 4 different fronts, you don't need just a starting 11. And it's a case of people getting the chance. If Sima I know he's not, but if he was fit and coming back, would it be fair to say he comes in on Thursday night and Silva's out? And that's football. You get your chance, you get your position. On the subject of Dessers, when people start, and he is a little bit Marmite with a lot of fans because he does miss a fair few. But I just turn around and say, we've won 1 cup this season. We're still in Europe and we're top of the league. And without Dessers' goals, I don't think any of those would probably have happened. So, yes, if he was something a lot better than what he is, the question mark is, well, would he be playing for Rangers? And the answer is probably no. But I think there's more to come from Dessa's, his work rate in Portugal last week, stretching defenders. If he can add a little bit of composure in the 6-yard box and become more of a natural finisher, then we could have one hell of a player on our hands. But the way we play football, to have him putting 60, 70 minutes in, or alternatively coming on when the game is stretched and the opposition are tired, and him putting that effort in the last 20, 30 minutes, it doesn't have to be him that scores the goals, and if we're getting goals from midfield, we're getting goals from wide areas, who cares who scores them, as long as the end result is it's Rangers are winning.
Yeah. And I think that's, if you look at it on paper and look at his return, you'd say, actually, do you know what? The guy has done well. He's created a lot, and he does cause a lot of problems. There is that level of frustration, as you say. I think there was one the other night where, I can't remember who it was, but they drilled a sort of shot come across the goal, and Dessa sort of just left it. And I think everyone was a bit bemused as to kind of, did he just do that? Did he think he was offside? So yeah, I think you're right. I think there's certainly a player in there, but personally, I'd love to see Seema down the middle as a number 9. I think he's got the perfect attributes to be a really good centre forward. I don't think we ever really tried that option. So I think that could be someone that you'd look at that knows the club, that could come in and potentially fill that void. Right. We're going to get onto the juicy stuff now, lads. So let me bring up this little presentation that I've pulled together. We are going to talk about, and Jeff, I don't want to put you on the spot too much here, so we'll go around the panel and ask, but we've got 3 different slides here, and the 3 different decisions that have divided the Scottish press, shall we say. You mentioned someone's name earlier who you've probably not seen the pod before. We try not to say his name, so we'll give you in the spirit of yours. We'll give you a yellow card this time, Jeff, to make it relevant to you, shall we? Yeah. So, Scotty, talk to me about this. What happened?
Sterling's got the ball. He's got the momentum. Obita comes in at the back and catches him. I think it's a fairly straightforward penalty to me, to be honest with you, Ross. I don't think there was much contention in it. I mean, even when you look back at the Viaplay panel, there was 3-1 to yeses in terms of it being a penalty. It's probably one of the most obvious penalties Rangers have had all season, and I can't believe it's even a talking point amongst the press, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. Billy, what did you make of it?
I'll qualify this by saying I am not a qualified referee, but for me, it's the penaltiest penalty since Penny the penalty packed her trunk and went off to the penalty circus. It's a joke that it's even talked about, that the speed he's going at, he barges him into the back. I don't know what that person you're talking about on commentary was trying to suggest by saying there's no contact. It's for me in real time when I seen it, I was just like, well, that's a penalty. There was no question in my mind it was going to be.
Yeah, for me, it was the pace that he was going at and travelling at. Any slight contact is going to go down. Jeff, what did you make? You were there in the stadium. What did you make of the incident?
Penalty. End of story. I mean, people forget nowadays when I started refereeing, there had to be intent. Everything was built around intent. Handball, which we could talk about forever and a day, because I don't understand what a handball is nowadays. But, if a player had ran into a player and it was accidental, then there was no offence. But intent was taken out of the laws of the game, God knows how many years ago, 15 years or more ago. And, there's contact there. He doesn't dive. I mean, from 80-odd yards away up in the stands, it looked a penalty, clear-cut penalty to me. When I've watched it on the television tonight, I don't know what anybody is. I think sometimes you've got to know and understand the TV punditry game. And, you've got your straight guy and your funny guy, and to have your debate, one will say red, one will say white. And it's just to stimulate conversation. But, they're clutching at straws here. It was... To use the fans' favourite saying, it was a stonewaller. I don't see any argument or any need for further discussion. It was a penalty, end of. Yeah.
No, I think everyone watching that and knew that there was in the commentary box there was a good cop and a bad cop in the
I think you got it right the first time.
Oh, did I? Oh, yeah. Slip of the tongue, excuse me. Right, moving quickly on to the next incident then. So Obita clearly gave away that penalty. He didn't actually get carded for that incident. It was a Tom Lawrence clattering, I think, at the start of the second half, if I remember rightly. But he was certainly hanging the bait out for the referee to bite on. When McCausland went off, he pushed the fitness coach as well as McCausland off. I think that rattled a few people. And then clearly the sending off instant, the second yellow was a flailing arm. He stopped him going down the line. My first view of it was the referee wasn't going to give a second yellow just by his movements. I think then Goldson and a few other players went towards it, in fairness, and pointed out the fact that he'd probably done 2 or 3 different incidents and was on very thin ice. Scotty, what was your take on that? Do you think it was definitely a second yellow?
100%, but he should have been off when he put his hands on the Rangers medical stuff, and Ross McCausland, who's going off injured. End of story. That's the second yellow for me. Whether I'm right or wrong, I don't know whether it's in the rule books or not, but you can't be doing that. You can't be doing that. Anything could have been wrong with Ross McCausland, and he's taking his time to go off the park. God knows where he's sore, and he's getting pushed off by a Hibs player. And before that, Obita had already had a couple of nibbles at players. He'd already been warned off the referee, so that should have been off before he's even got a chance to put his hands on Matondo, to be honest with
you. Yeah. Billy, there was a couple of strange yellow cards. I remember the Roof one when he just come on and sort of went into the player. Quite innocuous. It just looked like he was getting up to the speed of the game, in my view. Do you think the referee was kind of forced into giving the second yellow for Obita due to the speed and freneticness of the match, or do you think it was just a clear second yellow off?
I mean, for me, if I'm again remembering it right, it seemed like an obstruction as well. His hands are high. If you put your hand up there, you chance getting a booking for it. But I think he already, as Scott was saying, is already on thin ice with a few incidents before. He could have been off before that happened. I think he's probably more so been booked for persistent fouling than that being really that egregious an offence. But if you put your hands up, you run the risk of it. I thought the Roof one was a strange booking. I didn't feel it was it was a free kick, but I didn't feel it was a yellow.
Yeah. And Jeff, you would have probably been refereeing at the time, or certainly involved with the game at the time when the kind of elbow rules came in and they really started enforcing jumping with an elbow, leading with an elbow, flailing an arm. And I think there was a point in time, kind of like when the tackle from behind came in, where a lot of players were getting, stung with a straight red for these sorts of incidents. What was your take on the Obita second yellow?
Well, he certainly gave the referee decisions to make. I've noticed some of the comments coming in at the bottom of the screen that he should have been cautioned for the conceding the penalty. I disagree with that. It was a coming together of players. I don't think there was a whole host of intent. It was a penalty. Not every foul is a yellow card. Not every offence is a yellow card. If it was, we'd end up playing 6-a-side every week. But, having already been cautioned, I could understand, because let's put show on the other foot and Rangers are chasing the game and an opponent is going off the field. This is where players don't make it easy for themselves, because there's so much time wasting going on. There's so much play acting going on. It's sometimes difficult for us to realise from a refereeing point of view, from a fan's point of view, if a player is really injured. He's certainly got no business to be involved ushering them off. If the referee, I could see the player, McCausland, he wasn't conning, he was injured. And, he was taking his time to go off. Perhaps, if he's got a muscle pull, you're not going to sprint off, are you, and tear the muscle even further. But that's the business of the match officials to deal with it. Unfortunately, from my viewing in recent times, match officials aren't dealing with the time wasting and the play acting and everything. But it's certainly none of his business. So again, he's putting his behaviour in the attention of the referee. So, you've almost, as a referee, got a totting up procedure in your mind. He's persisting in misconduct. And I think, because I agree with what one of the lads said there, the ref didn't initially react, whether he was following play, because Rangers were on the attack, and that's happened almost off the ball. I've got a feeling that perhaps the fourth official has said something, they're all mic'd up. And it was just a totting up procedure. Yes, the arm was high. Was it violent? Was it an elbow to the head? We're not saying it was, but it doesn't have to be. And, he's gave the referee a decision to make. And I think overall, a second yellow card was warranted, not just for that offence, but for a multitude. He seemed to be in amongst everything. And it was at the time of the game where the temperature was just starting to go up a little bit. It was starting to get a bit trappy with the tackles coming in, and it didn't end there from a Hibs point of view, because then we saw something that you're probably going to come on and discuss in a few minutes. But I don't think he can have any complaints that he saw red yesterday.
Yeah, fair enough. And Jeff, just on that, it kind of brings me on to a question that I had for you. As a referee on the pitch, and you're watching tackles flying in, and the crowd's starting to get noisier and noisier, do you start to feel that tempo rise within you as well? Do you start to feel the kind of adrenaline start soaring within you? And do you think that is something that comes across in referees when they start getting card happy through a sort of 10, 15-minute period?
Well, in all my time of coming up to Scotland, and, this, you can open a can of worms here, because I do have a certain amount of sympathy in Scotland, because I've spoke to people in the past from the Scottish FA about this. In England, we have got a massive game that you can learn. You can be refereeing in non-league football, sort of tier 7 in England, where there's 4,000 and 5,000 crowds, and then you're going up into, you're refereeing at Portsmouth and places like that in the third tier of English football, where they've got 20,000. Birmingham and Bradford in the fourth tier, where they've got 15,000. So you're getting to do high-profile games in front of, auditoriums that have atmosphere and noise and passion. Come on, look at the SPL, where you've got some grounds there. Livingston being a perfect example. After Rangers and Celtic, you've then got Aberdeen, Hibs and Hearts with mid to high teens. And then after that, there isn't, as a referee, it's a bit like as a footballer, you've got to be tested and consistently tested at, the bigger games. Now, you can be refereeing big derby matches in the Championship or Division 1, and you're getting that footing and, learning. Whereas, sometimes referees can get way up the scale in Scotland, and unless the referee at, Ibrox or the other place, they're never going to referee in front of a really big crowd. Refereeing, like anything in life, is about gaining experience and learning from it. It's very, very difficult for the refs in Scotland to get that hands-on experience, because, you can be 1 week, you can be refereeing in front of 60,000, 50,000. The next week, you're back down to 2,500. And the atmosphere, the tension and everything that goes on in a game, the more big games you do, it's the same for the players. The more big games the players play in, the better they will get, and the younger players will learn quicker and hopefully move on to bigger and better things. Yesterday, that's a cup quarter final, and there's 14,000 in the ground, and the atmosphere was created in the main by 3,000 plus at one end of the ground. But as a referee, if you read my autobiography, I think I put in there, one of the tips I would give to any referee is that while everybody else is losing the cool, you as the referee have got to keep yours. And I did witness over the years, and have witnessed several games where, there's been nothing, 1 or 2 yellow cards in the first 70 minutes of the game. And then also in the last 20 minutes, it's yellow, and Is that because the tension of the game has built to a crescendo, or is that perhaps because the referee hasn't got a hold of things earlier on? I mean, it's my pet hate with time wasting. Stop time wasting in the first 10 minutes and you ain't got a problem. Try stopping it in the last 10 minutes. You've let far too much go. I thought the referee yesterday, and I'm sure I'll be ridiculed for this, but I thought the referee did well. He didn't get every decision 100% right because, believe it or not, referees, like players, don't get everything right during the course of the game. But I think yesterday he got the big decisions right.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm glad you've said that, because I think we'll all be in agreement. And just very quickly before we start jumping to the Q&A, look, the images probably tell a story for themselves. I think the speed of the challenge, which is obviously now in the referee's kind of handbook to tackle that is of excessive speed or force, is one that can be given a red to very easily. I think we'll all agree that it was a deserved red. I think the lad came in far too quickly and very much endangered the opponent. Scott, are you with me on that?
Yes, very much so, mate. Very much so. I think the way Lundstrom rides the challenge has probably stopped his leg getting broken. I think, if that's fair to say, I think he's anticipated it and he's positioned himself for minimal damage, if that's fair to say, because Lundstrom was still in the park. But yeah, it was a straight red for me.
Yeah. Billy, do you have any sympathy with those out there saying it could have been a yellow?
No, I don't have much sympathy for it. It's completely reckless. I mean, there's some stills where you see both his feet off the ground. We're lucky, and he's lucky, the Hibs player, that it was John Lundstrom, such an experienced player, and not maybe a Ross McCausland, who maybe wouldn't have known to position his body, and then he does get a broken leg. So, no, I think the only reason that there's no broken leg is Lundstrom's experience.
Yeah, fair enough. And Jeff, what I'm going to do now is, firstly, just what are your thoughts on it quickly?
It's a red card. I thought it at the time. It's not a million miles different to the John McGinn one. I don't know whether you saw the one he did for Aston Villa yesterday against Tottenham.
Yes.
The player's totally lost control. Don't know what he's trying to achieve. He's certainly got no interest in the ball. The red mists come down. It follows on shortly after the first sending off, so the player's probably not the happiest out there. Things are going against his team, but if there was ever any chance of Hibs coming back into the game yesterday, he single-handedly ruined that, because it wasn't a mistimed tackle; it was violent conduct. People put it down as serious foul play. The difference between violent conduct and serious foul play is the ball, and the ball wasn't in question there. He wasn't going for the ball, he was going for the man. So, no, I don't think, again, I can't understand. I mean, their manager, and, we get these wonderful sayings like referees, they don't know the game, they've never played the game. And that riles me more than anything, because, there's somebody who's played the game and is managing the team. We know he's got a vested interest, but he doesn't think that's a red card. Now, if he's not manager of Hibs and he's sat in a studio, he might have a different view on it. But no, I don't think there's much more to discuss. It's a red card, end of.
Ross, can I come in there a second?
Which go?
Yeah,
go ahead.
Jeff, this is directed to you. If you see a player on the park and you feel that the red mist has come down and he's losing it, do you take it upon yourself to speak to him or speak to the captain, or do you think, well, it's what you choose to do from now on is your fault?
You see, my problem is I can talk about 20 years ago. I can't talk about now. It's a different world. It's a different game. The answer to your question in my day was most definitely, I saw my role as to manage a game of football. I'm a football fan, as I think most people will gather and know by my support of football teams. And I tried to referee a game in a manner to make the game be good for people to watch. And that was to protect the skillful players, to stop the time wasters. And, I realised that in that football stadium, 95% of the people in that stadium yesterday, They are not interested in one iota in what is right and what is wrong. They want their team to win. The referee isn't interested in who's winning. He's interested in keeping control of that game and keeping the players on the pitch. And in order to do that, as you've just said there, Billy, you've got to be aware with what's going on. You've got to be talking to players, and you've got to be saying that that's your last one. I've seen that. That's it. No more. Or saying to the captain, have a word with your number 10. He's getting close. And that was man management. Now, I don't see evidence of man management. It's got to be the card, the ultimate sanction. And a card is flashed like confetti at a wedding. What a referee should be doing when he issues is a yellow card. And I know the fans will be getting a little bit angry with this when he's booked him. Why does he need to be talking to him? It's just slowing the game down. But the issue of a caution, think of the word caution. The caution is me saying to you, look, I don't want to send you off, but we've been playing 20 minutes. I'm cautioning you for this one. You've got 70 minutes to go. Just calm down. Just think on. And give the game the chance for the red mist not to, not to rise. But I think now in the modern game, the man management aspect of refereeing, the talking to and talking with players, sadly doesn't seem. I mean, I always used to say in my day, if I went to the game and I'd forgot my whistle, I could referee the game of football. But if I went to the game and I'd lost my voice, I'd be struggling, because it wasn't the hitting the whistle and throwing 2 bits of plastic up in the air that kept control of the game. It was the talking to players. But in my day, you could have a bit of banter. If I talk to the former referees, as I do on the speaking circuit when I'm up in Scotland, the former referees, we've all got tales to tell of the crack we had with the players, and it was all man management. Now, if you say, the language I used to use, I'd be kicked out now. If a player came swearing at me, they'd get it back, and we'd have a smile. Aye, fair enough, Jeff, get on with it. Now, the players would be adopting the attitude. He can't talk to me like that, and a referee that did give a little bit back, he'd be finished. I always say, if I was refereeing nowadays, my career would have been over in 5 minutes. I wouldn't have lasted. But it was man management. It worked. And I think if you saw a little bit more man management and control, when the ball goes out for a throw-in, it has to be thrown back. This is boring, really boring. But when the ball goes out for a throw-in, it's supposed to be thrown back into play from the position it went out. Now, we haven't got a slide rule. We can't be talking 6 inches. But I see players now 10, 15, 20 yards up the line, and the referees are doing nothing about it. Now, if you get hold of something like that after 10 minutes of the game, if you get hold of the goalkeeper that's taking forever to put the ball down to take a goal kick, if you stop that, you've set your standard. The players, better watch this one today, and they'll stop doing it. If you have to issue a yellow card for time wasting early on, they've got a hell of a long way. And I just don't see referees being strong enough. We're not talking about these bad tackles we've just talked about yesterday. We're talking about the referee taking control of the game earlier on in the proceedings, and then it makes it a more enjoyable for the players, and it certainly makes it more enjoyable for us as fans watching the game. And you don't need daft new laws and daft new interpretations and people now. What's this bloody game we're watching now? Playing through the lines and all these wonderful statements. I talk to footballers that I'm friends with that played 20, 30 years ago. You never had these statements. They've tried to reinvent the game of football. If we went back to the basics, I knew what a handball was. I don't now.
And Jeff, that brings me on to a question. That brings me on to a question then, Jeff. So we're going to try and get through a few questions. We've probably only got 5-10 minutes left. So Paul has asked a question on last Thursday's penalty against John Suter. You mentioned a handball there. I thought it was the right time to bring that one up. that to me felt very, very harsh.
Well, don't forget, I'm a Rangers fan, but I also, because of my former profession, it's a bit like when you're in the ground and everybody jumps up for the goal. My first reaction is to look across to see if the linesman's got his flag in the air. So I always look at it from a different perspective than just a normal fan who will jump up.
Of course.
Handball is absolutely doing my nut in. I mean, the Suter one, by the letter of the recently rewritten, re-amended, the chopping and changing it. By the time you get to the top as a referee, you've refereed for so many years, you know the laws, you know what you're doing. It. Hang on a minute, we're putting a new interpretation on this, we're putting a new interpretation on that. Now, there's one side of the Suter one is his hands are up here. They're up by the side of his head. That's not natural. But when you read the interpretation of the law, it says if the ball is deflected from part of your body onto your arm, then it's not intentional. And that one, it is confusing to me because your arms are up here, whether you need to jump with them up there or not, and the ball hits your head and hits your arm. It's not a penalty by the letter of the law if you're looking at it in one way, but then just look at it as a neutral, which I know we're not prepared to do because it was against Rangers. And you think, well, is that fair that the ball could go into the goal and it hit someone's hand up there? Now, you wouldn't have had that. All these queries and was all scratching our heads and inconsistencies. Wouldn't have had that if they hadn't started fannying about with the handball. A handball years ago when I was refereeing, it had to be intentional. So it doesn't matter whether it comes off your knee, your arm, or where it comes off. I mean, the John Lundstrom penalty we conceded at Killy, was it Killy?
Yeah, it was Kilmarnock.
Yeah. I mean, I was sat there in the ground and obviously I thought, that looks harsh. And when you get home and you watch it again, he's turned his back. The ball's hit his elbow, but then the reaction of the ball has caused his arm to come up. Now, that is easy for me to say, watching it in slow motion. In real time, a ball driven in, that split second that the arm goes like that, it can look as if it was an intentional movement. But it wasn't intentionally. He's turned his back on the ball. And I think a lot of the problems we've got now, the authorities have made the problems for players, for referees, for everyone, and for us fans as understanding. So the Suter one, obviously, as a Rangers fan, I don't want it to be a penalty. By the letter of the law, it's hit a part of his body, then his hand. So you're saying, well, it shouldn't have been a penalty. But when your hands are up here as a centre half, there is one side of me saying, well, you can expect to have it given against you.
Yeah. And I think that's probably the letter of the law. I think a lot of frustration came out from players and Billy, Scott, I'm not sure if you agree. I think the ruling in Europe is slightly different to the domestic game, where the handball...
How can it be?
Exactly.
That's the frustrating thing. You've got all right, I'll use a Scottish name then. You've got Willie Collum refereeing in Scotland on a Saturday and in Europe on a Wednesday night. Yep. And, all the English guys that are doing, I mean, we've got a couple of English guys that are doing really are doing the top games in Europe. And, when you're refereeing and you're looking for something, and then in the back of your mind, you've got to think, hang on a minute, are we playing to the English rules, the Scottish rules? Are we playing to the European rules? The laws of the game should be the same, whether it's a junior game, in Auchinleck or wherever, or the Scottish FA Cup final. It should be the same laws of the game. And because they've faffed and clarted about with them, everybody's confused.
Yeah. I think that's exactly the frustration that you get from these, especially when, you're away from home, you go a goal up and then something like that happens. And the players might not have clocked the fact that could be a potential infringement. Right, moving on to some more questions very quickly. Dean has asked whether or not you think foreign referees would be better suited in the Scottish game to improve the overall level of the refereeing.
Of course they would, until they make the first decision and give a penalty against Rangers or give a penalty to Celtic, and then people wouldn't give a damn whether they were foreign or what they were. They'd just be, the be in black. It's a sad condemnation if that had to happen, because your own country should be producing officials that can operate in that game. And, if you get into the other subject in Scotland, which doesn't apply in England, where they bring religion into it, and people seem as if it's not that just being a bad referee. There's conspiracy theories and everything else. Are people then going to want referees coming from certain countries rather than other countries? I'm not a fan for it. I don't think it would have to be almost like European competition football, where we get a cross exchange. It could be beneficial. I've said there before, you've got Scottish referees that are refereeing Livingston versus Motherwell. They're not going to get the experience, say, that if they went abroad and were refereeing Ajax versus Feyenoord. So there could be benefits, but without going on too long, I think it's sad if that had to be the case. And we get back to the bottom line. I don't think it matters, because we've had European games where the fans are not very happy with the referees. They're the same European referees that they're now saying we'd like to have in. The bottom line is, any referee that gives a decision against your team, you're going to be on his back. So it wouldn't matter colour, creed, sex, or whatever.
And rightly so. And the last question we've got it from Kai from the Rangers Journal. What was the most satisfying red card that you ever gave out? Who was asking for it the most?
My most satisfying red card was when I got home from a game of football. There was no red cards. There was little or no yellow cards, and people were talking about the football and not the referee. I always took this is a lesson to any referee at any level. If you go home on a night and you've had to issue one red card, or as yesterday, 2 red cards, there's a question you've got to ask yourself as a referee. Did I contribute to that? Now, if where you've said the temperature, the niggle, the atmosphere has started early on in the game, and after an hour you end up sending someone off, as a referee, from a learning point of view, you've got to look back and say, if I'd have got hold of people and spoke to people earlier on, would I have stopped that escalating? And that's the question you should be saying. I was never satisfied to send players off, because I saw my job to keep control of the game. And, if somebody punches someone, completely out of nothing, you've got to do your job. But I, for one, took no satisfaction. Nowadays, going back to being a fan, there's a fair few would be on my list, but that's me becoming a fan, not a referee.
Well, I hope they're not wearing blue anyway. Jeff, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the pod this evening. Tell us a bit about what you're doing currently in retirement. What sort of stuff you're doing? You mentioned your autobiography. Talk us through it.
Well, that was a long time ago now. When I finished refereeing, I did quite a bit of media stuff. I used to do Sky on a Monday morning, what Dermot Gallagher does now, but I didn't toe the party line. I would tell it, as I hope you found out tonight. I'll give you my honest opinion. I'm not a yes man, and that didn't really fit with the authorities. So I continued doing quite a bit of media, but I've been on the after dinner circuit and been to all parts of Scotland and continue to do so. I don't get much from the supporters of one club in that particular country, but I get plenty of bookings at Rangers supporters clubs and the like. On the football front, obviously, I'm a season ticket holder at Ibrox, go whenever I can, and it's usually about 40 games a season I manage to get to. I work for Middlesbrough Football Club, and do the hospitality, and I'm a club ambassador for a non-league club in my particular area. I think yesterday, I'm just having a little check here, not that I'm a saddo, but yesterday was my 80th game that I've been to this season. So it's fair to say football is still a very important part of my life. I loved football. I was a fan. I played the game, albeit not to a very good standard, and had a thoroughly enjoyable career in refereeing. And now I've gone back to doing what I started, being a fan. So keeps me busy. Tomorrow night I'm down in Birmingham to watch Middlesbrough play. Thursday night I might just be at the Ibrox, I couldn't think.
Well, that would be a wise choice. Scotty and Billy, Scotty first. I don't know if you've got anything you want to say to Jeff or to those watching at home.
Yeah, Jeff, see if anybody's wanting to book you for a night, where can they find you?
Well, you can get in touch with me via social media. I mean, most of the agents, you can get a hold of me, but via social media, Facebook, etc. I've just finished with my website. Otherwise, you could have booked me through that. But it's funny how people get in touch. If they want me, they can get me. I mean, I've got a few events coming up in Scotland in the forthcoming months, and I always love coming up there. I always have a bit of banter and tell a few stories that with a bit more choice language that I haven't been doing tonight. I've been on my best behaviour tonight, but love coming up. And if it means that I can do it on a Friday night and on a Saturday night in combination with watching Rangers play, it works superbly for me. So hopefully I'll see you lads and a lot more Rangers fans in the not too far distant future.
No, it's brilliant, mate.
Sorry, Billy, anything from you? Sorry, Scotty.
No, I just want to, thanks to Ross and Scott. But Jeff, thank you very much for coming on. It's been really insightful. And again, thank you to all those that have been watching and commenting. Yeah,
my pleasure. Thanks for inviting us, lads. And I'm sure now you've got my number. If there's any more controversy, and there will be between now and the end of the season, just give me a shout. More than happy to help.
Super. Well, Jeff, it's been a pleasure having you on, and we hope to have you on again in the future if you want to. It'd be great to have you back.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you to those watching at home. Well, that's another semi-final for Rangers and a trip to Hampden. We've got one cup in the bag, and we're still firing on another 3 fronts. As Big Marv said, keep believing. Good night.